Everyone is there.
Yeah, sounds like it. You can get started. We're a little bit behind on the clock, so.
Today actually I'm going to extend the class automation testing, and before that I will cover some basic testing concepts, then I'll go through the automation using Selenium, WebDriver as well as IDE. Actually, before going to the automation and what is the test automation? A test automation is nothing but writing a piece of code to test another piece of code. So in simple words, automation is like writing a simple code to test another code. And I'm going to show you how to create an automation test case using Selenium IDE as well as WebDriver. And before that, let me cover the basic concepts, because as an automation engineer, we need to know the basic QA concepts as well as the coding skills in order to develop a automation framework. So basic concepts are like a validation and verification. And what is validation and what is verification? So verification is a kind of a process when you are developing or when you are doing some work, you are verifying on each and every step to make sure that you are developing or you are constructing the right thing. So the validation is once you develop the whole product or a whole thing, then you are going to validate against the user requirements to it is working as expected, or that means validation most of the times will be done by the client or as well as the person and as well as the stakeholders. And verification is normally will do by the person who is actually developing it to make sure that he is developing the right thing. Say for example, if you are going to a construct, or if you are going for a stylist to stitch a shirt, so he is going to verify that every time he is stitching the right length and right arms and right things. So once he consolidated everything and put together as a shirt, he is going to finally validate that shirt is according to the requirements for that person or not. And the person is also going to validate that that shirt is according to his requirement or not. So that is the actually basic difference between validation and the verification. And testing actually basically divided into two things. One is black box testing and another one is white box testing. So as the name suggests, the white box testing means we can call this as a glass box testing also. That means we were able to see the things which are inside of a component or inside of a module. So in development terminologies, the white box testing is nothing but testing the code, because we can see the internal features of a code. Black box testing means, as name saying, so we don't know what is the internal details of a system or a component. We are going to just test the final output and final input by providing input, and we are going to validate the final output. That is called black box testing. And next thing is, I'm just giving just a basic overview on the testing concepts and testing techniques. Actually, these are the techniques normally you have to use it as a manual test engineer, as an automation test engineer, because equal partitioning classes as a manual test, as a test people already know that. The test equal partitioning means, say for example, you are validating a password, or you are validating a input box. So it is going to allow 1 to 100 characters. So you don't need to write 100 test cases in order to validate each and every input. That means it is a redundancy. That means as a tester we need to reduce the redundancy and produce the valuable test cases, so that which will detect the actual issues. So in equal partitioning, what we are going to do is we are going to divide them into a classes. A class can hold a set of data. That means 1 to 100. So 1 to 100 is one group. So anything you are passing between 1 to 100, you are validating, that is fine. And less than 1 is one group, greater than 100 is one group. So that is how we need to divide them into groups in order to writing a test cases, or in order to validate the things. Instead of validating each and everything, we need to make them as a logical groups. We need to validate the logical groups by passing them into the test cases. So that is called equal partitioning. Boundary value analysis. So today actually I'm behaving as a tester. So as a tester, always I need to make sure that developer will 99% of the times will do the mistakes on the boundary values. That means say your password is 1 to 8 characters. So most of the times developers will put less than or greater than, they will forget about, or sometimes they will put greater than or equal to. So that we need to validate that, identify the boundary values for a requirement. We need to validate that. So that is called boundary value analysis. Let me get back to the automation testing patterns. Actually, in automation testing, we have different types of patterns. So one of them is a data-driven. So data-driven means if you're writing a test case, your test case is going to drive by a data. That means say you have a login test case. So in order to test a login test case, manually we need to test different types of input data and validate the different types of outputs, including positive test cases and negative test cases. So in data-driven, what is going to happen is you are going to put a data in some data source. A data source can be a Excel or XML or a database, where that data is going to feed to as the input to a test case, and your test case is going to run against that input, and it will validate your expected results against that. That is called data-driven. And next is key-driven. Key-driven means it is a kind of a actions what you can perform on a test case. Based on that, you can write a test case. Actually, IDE is one of the example for a key-driven. Hybrid is a kind of a combination of both. So I will show you that key-driven as well in a short. Actually, this is actually the whole testing phases. So when it comes to the white box testing, the unit test cases are the white box testing, because the person who is developing a code, he will know the internal details or internal piece of a code. He will write the unit test cases. And next piece is the integration test cases. Integration test case is a combination of two different services combining together, and you are validating that. Maybe called as an integration test. And there is another thing called system test. This system test actually normally is divided into smoke test and functional test and the regression test. So I guess we already know about what is smoke and what is functional and what is regression. So smoke is to make sure that the basic functionality or acceptance criteria is working as expected. So the functional test cases can be unlimited. That means we can derive in a different scenarios and different testing. And regression testing is when you are adding a new features or when you are updating existing features. So the regression test suite is a collection of again a test cases going to test the existing features and existing functionality is not broken and it is working as expected. That means newly introduced changes are newly updated. Newly introduced changes are not breaking the system under test. And the performance test. Performance tests are divided into load test and stress test. So actually, yeah, I don't want to go through the performance test right now, but let me give you what is load and what is stress. So the load test means you are putting a system under a pressure by putting a load on it, and you are going to validate how that system is. Sorry?
ఒక్క నిమిషం
Actually, the stress test is going to validate putting a system under a trust, we are going to identify what is the bottlenecks for a system. That means this is the boundary value, so that my web server is going to accept this many requests. So my database is going to accept this many requests simultaneously. That kind of a test is going to call as a stress test.
Load test also almost.
No, load test you are going to put a system under a test up to that level. Up to that level. Say for example, you have a web server. How will you know that my web server is going to support this many users? You are going to put a stress onto the web server, and you are going to keep increasing onto the web server. At a certain point, your web server is going to break down. That means that is the value your web server is going to support. So the stress test is useful in order to identify the system, how many requests is going to support or how many requests is going to accept. Load test is different. Load test is up to that stress, you are going to provide the load and you are going to validate the system, how it is behaving. The load can be a different ways. It can be a step-by pattern or say for example, a load in general way. Step-by pattern means if 5 people jump onto the system and they start testing, after that 5 people will join, after that again 5 people will join, and some people will do something and some people will do the something. And another scenario is, say for example, this is a holiday season, so you are opening some commercial website, you are selling some products, so thousands of the users will jump onto the same time. How your system is behaving. Load can be changed when you are all the users attacking at the same time, or step by step how it is attacking, and most of the times load test will get a good results when you are running for a long period, because if you are running for a 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you don't get the accurate results. If you are putting a system under a load for at least an hour, then you will know that how your system resources are working. So load test is completely different than the stress test. So automation testing. So automation is nothing but writing a code to test another code. Automation is also a automation, and writing a functional testing, a black box testing we are doing, testing a web browsers, and those things also we can automate. And there are some database transactions, database operations, those things also we can automate. So right today we are going to talk about the automation of a web applications, which is used by the Selenium, which is a functional testing. So what are the benefits of the automation testing? So which will reduce the cost reduction, because only many people need to be run the automation test cases. Suppose if you want to run a regression suites, you don't need to sit all the time there, and need to divide many resources if someone want to do the regression testing. So if it is automation, then no need to we are reducing the resources. That means obviously we are reducing the cost, so that which is gain for the company if you are developing automation test cases. And also main thing, automation test cases, once you develop, it is going to work for any different versions. That means your application is changing or upgrading into one version to another version. Then you don't need to again retest those things. Once you written an automation test case, rerun those automation test cases on top of it with the minimal changes. You can perform that automation testing. So that those are the basic advantages of the automation testing. So this is just a manual versus the automation. The main advantage of automation is execution time is very less. We don't need to sit and watch the automation testing, and also reducing of the people, because we are automating all that automation manual test cases, so that it is reduced. The infrastructure wise, both are same tools. Automation may use more tools than training. Automation requires more training than the manual. So why the automation testing is useful? So let us think about continuous integration or continuous integration deployment. continuous integration is nothing but we already know that once you check in the code, it is going to build and it is going to run the unit test cases and it will publish the results to the web server or wherever the target server. So when you are doing the things, so when you are going, unit test is a kind of a automation test cases. So sometimes you can run the functional test cases which are written in Selenium or coded UI. You can validate nothing is broken, so that it will send a results to the throughout team, so that we will know that everything is working as expected. Any new changes are not introduced. I mean, new changes are not introduced. Any bugs or things, right? So that is why automation is very useful in a continuous integration environment. And it does not necessary to we are writing automation test cases only for continuous integration thing. So we are writing automation for different purposes like regression testing, smoke testing. Those are suites. Those are not a kind of a type of a test case. Those are a suite. Suite is nothing but a collection of a test cases. So how you are going to decide this is a regression suite, this is a smoke suite. So you are writing a test cases so that we need to sit with the business analyst or a product owners. We need to decide, and as well as the developers. Say we are developing something, so we need to give some dependency kind of a thing. Say I'm updating this module, so this module has dependencies on these modules. So that as a tester, we need to collect all those test cases and make that as a regression suite for that printer for that release. Smoke test. Smoke test is nothing but to make sure that all the existing functionalities are basic functionalities. I can say basic functionalities working as expected. So those are not a types. Those are a suite. So every time we need to configure those test cases. Sometimes you are dropping a feature, you're adding a new feature. All these suites will keep on increase or keep on decrease. That means you should be able to configure the test cases according to that. And what we can automate and what we cannot automate. So automation, say for example, you have a repetitive task you are performing over the time. That means it is better to automate those things. And also you have a one time of work. And that is also we need to look for a possibility. Suppose I'm making that as automated in a less amount of time, then we'll go for automation. If suppose we don't have that is difficult to automate, as well as that is one time use, then I don't want to automate because I don't want to spend time on that to create the automation. If I'm able to create it, I will create it first. That is how I'll decide what can I automate means I can automate anything, everything. Only one thing I cannot automate, user look and feel. So that's why that is only one thing we cannot automate. Still that one also we can automate. There is Selenium is providing the credentials are where to be there on the right top corner, and the menu should be there on the center of the page. Still you can validate those things, but still it is always recommended to look and feel always needs to be validated by the manually. And why we need a Selenium audit? Selenium is a open source and it supports a cross-browsing testing. So we can validate same test cases across many browsers. Coded UI is actually it's going to support only the IE, and as well as coded UI is not flexible enough, because once they release, they are going to say that coded UI is going to support only IE7. So after release, they introduce IE10. So then coded UI is not going to support IE10. Whereas Selenium is not like that. Selenium is always going to release a new releases on every month, so that any new browsers introduced, so third-party vendors are going to contribute their effort to create support their browsers in Selenium. So Selenium is always powerful, free, and customizable and extendable. Still we can use the Selenium as part of a coded UI test. And the next is a automation, next is a challenge. So what are the challenges normally we will face when you are doing a automation? One is a frequent UI changes. That means UI is always UI is always inconsistent. That means always UI is intended to be changed. Say for example, today I design a screen with certain control IDs and control names. A next developer may change those control IDs, control names. Maybe when we are upgrading certain applications, it may change usernames and user IDs of a control IDs and control names. So that's why it is not consistent. So we need to create an automation in such a way that it always needs to refer the controls using alias names, not like a actual control IDs and control names. If you are using alias names and you need to maintain a map where that map is going to associate your alias name with the actual control ID or a name, so that we don't need to worry about that. Next, synchronization issues. So most of the automation developers normally will do like a thread.sleep and thread.wait. Sometimes it will create a synchronization issues. So it is always recommended that not to use thread.sleep and thread.wait. So then what is the solution if you are not using thread.wait and thread.sleep? Say for example you are looking for a control. Say you already know that you are logging using username and password. You already know that you are expecting home page needs to have some label or something. Look for that label. Until that label is loaded, don't perform any action. So keep looking for that label up to certain configurable timeout period. Say for example, I click on a login. My login process is going to take me like a 30 minutes. So which is not allowed. So that is also a bug. So we need to sit with the developers or design people, decide so how long it will take the page loads. Based on the page loads, we need to configure in automation testing the timeouts. So based on the timeouts, we need to wait up to that limit, and after that we need to report that as also a bug. Test memory leak issues. So memory leak issues means you are open as a automation testing. You are opening a web browser, so you are not closing it, or you are opening many web browsers and you are not maintaining it properly. It is going to create a memory leak issues in your computer. So that always put it as a tear down methods as part of automation testing and close all the browsers. So so any questions up to this? Actually, let me go through first with the IDE. IDE is also Selenium provides IDE. IDE is a record and replay. And IDE is also a very powerful tool, but it's going to work only with the Firefox. So that means if you want to develop automation test case very fast and very quick, and you want to reuse it, still you can reuse it. But only one limitation is you cannot perform the automation test cases across multiple browsers. But as part of a functional testing, still you can use it. And second thing, the IDE limitation is if suppose you want to maintain some IDE is powerful, so still things with that we run and we can execute and we can create a test suites and we can do many things with IDE. So IDE comes with the Selenium. So let me give some small demo on how I'm going to use. What is the URL for test? No, I don't have a login name password. Let me go to some outreach. So in IDE, actually here it is going to like have command, target, and value. So it allows you to record, and as well as you can insert your own commands, and you can use the IDE as part of like identifying the controls. Even though you're writing using WebDriver, we can use the IDE to identify controls and how to record and how to get it, and we can take this as a starting point, and we can extend our test cases using WebDrivers. So in IDE, IDE here it is a fast to slow. That means if you are putting as a slow when you are replaying it, it is going to slowly perform the actions. If you are, because it is automation tool, so that we should not make it as very fast. Next. Once you like recorded the automation test cases, you can save that or you can edit that according to your needs. So once, right now I recorded this, so passing the username and passing this and click and wait. Click and wait, it is going to wait until your action is performed and going to the next page. And you can save this as a test case. So I already okay, so login. Test. We can add a test case. Suppose if you want to perform, I already did like for this. Shouldn't I? So here I added a test case, so that here once I submitted, I click on the status. How will I just click on the status? So you can directly insert as this command, so you don't need to record also every time. So for example, once you click on that, click a insert new command, type whatever you want, and here it will show you select. Once you click select, and once you click find, then it is going to hover it, and once you select that, it is going to record that. Click and wait. So it automatically records. Suppose in case you want to do your own command, insert your own command, you can do like that. You don't need to like go through always record and replay. So next, if I want to perform a assert, you can while recording, you can come here, you can select this. Once you right click and once you like show all available commands, there is like a assert title and assert size and verified title. So then what is the difference between assert and the verify?
Are they showing up on the browser?
On the browser. So because my IDE is running there on the back end, so
IDE is running.
yes, available. That means always testing means you need to validate at least one thing, right? Once you logged in, how will you know that your login is successful? You need to validate again. Say, for example, my applications is displaying on my home page, then I will know that my login is successful, right?
Will this show up in every browser?
Yep. No, only for Firefox. So that is the IDE limitation, yeah.
Well record.
Yeah.
After that, it can be played back anywhere.
No. IDE is only for Firefox. Record and replay only on Firefox.
Oh, I see. But once you say that, how will the browser?
That is different. That is, you are not performing as HTML, you cannot run it.
No. After you record the text, it save it as a HTML file, right? When you say file, save that. So then they can run it in the browser, right?
No, you cannot.
And
You can do the cross browser, but you need to export this as a different format, and you need to run using some other tool. I will show you that. So just with IDE, you cannot. IDE just only for Firefox. I'm not showing right now the exporting option. I'm doing just for IDE. IDE is only for record and replay and the Firefox. Then you can ask me, then what is the use means? Still you are doing a testing, right? You always, it doesn't necessary to test cross-browser functionality. Sometimes you need to test the functionality also. You can automate the functionality also, which will be useful when you are doing some regression testing, when you are doing some smoke testing. You don't need to depending on others. So that means you don't need to rerun manually, which will reduce a time lot. So once you logged in here, so that I need to make sure that if my applications are displaying, then I'll assume that is work. My login is worked as expected. So you can come here and show available command. You can click either one of these. So actually assert and verify, that's the almost same thing. So the basic difference between the assert and the verification is assert is a kind of a universal thing. If you use NUnit or you use a visual MS unit or some MB unit, always assert what will do. Suppose if you are performing an assert, if an exception happens, that means it is not working as expected, immediately your test case will stop there and it won't continue and it will report an issue. But there are certain scenarios, so you are validating, so you need to, you need to produce all the issues all at once. If you're using assert means if I'm asserting something, if it is failed, then you can only know that that is not working. And until that is fixed, you cannot go to the next one. If you are using verify means, you are going to continuously validate all the conditions. If anything failed, it is going to report that that is not working, this is not working, this is not working. All the issues you can report at once without aborting the current text execution. This is very simple, very useful. So once I selected that, then it automatically comes here. So click on status, assert test, so I'm asserting my applications. So my application is displaying, that means my test case is run successfully. So right now I don't need this. Next what I'm doing here is, so I'm coming here, I'm selecting this and clicking on Can you please mute the phone? Yep. Yeah, once I clicked on the link, then it is going to record it. And say sometimes you cannot perform all the operations with the record and replay. Say for example, there are HTML5 controls, or you are using a Kendo UI controls, or you are using a third-party controls. All those controls looks like a regular HTML controls, but internally they implemented in a different way to display as a HTML control. Internally they are using some divs or some spans or something else. So it is very hard to record and very hard to identify. So still we have an option to run a JavaScript. So Selenium is very useful if you want to execute a JavaScript also. That means if you want to run your application JavaScripts, you can select a run script. You can select that. You can pass the value as this, so that you will execute a JavaScript. So let me show you. So I'm clicking on the next. So once I selected this value 9, so here actually what I'm expecting is once I selected a 9 other, so the please specify needs to be entered. So that is my business requirement. So I need to validate that. So once I click on the next, then it is going to get some message, so that I'm going to validate that. So let me start the recording. Okay, it is stopped. Okay, so let me rerun this. Next, let me run this. Sorry. So here is the logs, so that you can see what are the issues are happening. So here what is happening is it is not able to find this. So that means what I have to do is you can clear the logs. So you can either delete that or you can modify that. So right now I'm inserting a new command. I'm making this as record. I'm coming here, selecting this. So it is come back here, so that it is recorded. This is the one. So then delete this, and if I want to make sure that that is the one I'm expecting, or in the browser you can go back, you are on the screen, you can come back here. So what you are doing is you are clicking on the link, right click and execute that command. So it take you the next screen. So that means whatever you recorded, you already verified. So
in between, if you miss some
steps you can add.
You can go and back and add there, right?
To make, yeah. So actually IDE is also powerful, so you need to use it in the right way. So button success, I don't need to.
When it failed, it did not go to the next step, right? Did it?
No.
He didn't record it, he inserted it later.
I inserted it later. Yeah. So I want to show that like a recorded. So if any exception happens, so I want to insert my own commands, what are the actions I need to perform, and I need to validate that whatever I inserted there, it is working as expected. So right now I'm on that screen. I need to run a JavaScript. Say I'm good at JavaScript, so some actions we cannot perform while doing the automation. Still I can take some piece of a JavaScript code or like some of a function which is already there on my application. I can directly call it from here. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just like putting value as 9. So right now it is high school graduate. So I'm coming here, execute this command. So it is other. So that means my JavaScript is executed there. So that is, it is also working as expected. So we can proceed further.
But when you selected others, the enter key is also there, right? So you didn't get the next field.
No. Other, I executed only JavaScript. What I have to do this. So if suppose I want to like exact functionality, I need to write the JavaScript, or I need to call the JavaScript which we already using in a code. so that it can select the other and it can perform the next action. So still it will work, because if suppose I want to click on the button value next, right? So I'm just like executing on itself, but you don't need to do like this. It is, I mean, the way of debugging it and the way of like a recording and way of writing your own commands as a part of your test cases. So once I click next, see, you got the error message. So that is like very fast, very convenient. So again, I'm validating this. If suppose I want to run this, come here. Next test case, clicking on it, verifying the message. So these kind of things, we don't need to spend much time on this. So because we can reuse this and it is very convenient for everyone. IDE.
Are you giving the starting point to it? No, right?
Yeah, we need to give the starting point, right? The open.
I mean, at the browser.
Yep.
Level.
Here you are saying open browser. Base URL is there, right? You are giving the URL there.
On the browser.
Yep.
Is it there? I think we are at that last step, right?
We are at the last.
Started off.
Yep.
On the browser, we are not at the first step, right?
We are at the first step. First, we already passed all the steps. These are the steps on each and every page, right? So when I'm showing that, I already logged in. I already went to my educational page where I'm performing that action command.
Right now, the browser is at a state where it is highlighting the error,
Yeah.
right? Now, if you want to rerun this, do you take it back to the login?
No,
screen?
it automatically takes care of it. It automatically takes care of it. It automatically takes. If suppose if I'm running it again.
Yeah, you didn't take it to the first page. It automatically.
It automatically take it off.
That's nice.
You don't need to worry about it. Select the other and set performing the actions.
So you don't need to use the starting point. The browser.
What you are asking is like you don't need to perform the logout action to going to back to the previous page.
Right.
No, it will do by its own. So with IDE we can record like in a few minutes. We can reuse this. Next. So for example, the IDE I can use this as a starting point for my actual, if suppose I'm using a WebDriver, I can use this as a starting point in order to identify controls, in order to identify things. Say for example, I'm here. Say I'm here. I want to identify a control. How will I identify a control? Suppose there are like many ways in order to identify a control. That means in order to perform an action, we need to first of all identify a control, right? That means, say for example, you want to enter a text, or you want to perform a JavaScript, or you want to calculate something. That means you need to identify a control first. So how we will identify a control? That means you can come here, say select any, say for example, I'm just selecting click, doesn't matter. Click, come here, click on the select, click on the find, come back here, select that. Say here you will see the target is identified by using ID. This is the actual ID name for that control. So if you like hover it, you will see like a different kind of options, how many ways you can identify a control in a Selenium. That means the same control can be identified using the name, using the CSS, using the export. So you need to decide which is the right way, because ID is a standard. That means always ID should be a unique on a web page. If suppose any developer or like anyone is creating duplicate IDs, we need to report that, we need to fix that. So because ID should be always unique. And name, And the XPath is suppose that sometimes there won't be IDs, then it is always recommended to use the XPath, and where it is located, you can use that. So this is what complete with the IDE. You can explore with this and you can create your own automation test cases in a minute.
So the source there has lines of code. There is one more tab.
Oh, source actually in the backend it is going to use a kind of a HTML file where it is going to put all your commands. I already mentioned like a key driven, right? Click and wait. Click is a key. Click and wait, run a script, do something and perform some action. So everything is recorded in HTML. The IDE is going to read that HTML and perform the action. Actually, when you are developing the automation framework, you can follow the same pattern. You can develop a framework like this so that it will be useful to everyone. They don't need to worry much. They just have to put all the things like this and our framework will execute this kind of a framework. Kind of a file. So that everyone needs to be perfect in writing automation using C# or something. Is it okay? Next. So once you created the automation test case and you decided you have more customizations and you need to do more things, then what you can do is you can export the test case. There are you can export the test cases in many languages. Ruby, Java, C#, Python. So you can export whatever the language or whatever the platform you are using in your application or using in your company. Depends on that. So right now I'm going to use the NUnit WebDriver. So what I'm exporting. Okay. So verify educational section.cs. So once I exported that, it is going to export to my C# file. Let me open that here. If you see, if you see this, it is automatically generated my C# file, including all those things. Except one thing, suppose it is not able to convert that, then it is going to put some kind of error message like this. Then we are responsible, we can customize that according to that. Yeah, this is a JavaScript. So Selenium WebDriver has its own way of executing the JavaScript. So that's why it added as it's not able to convert it to the C#. Okay, if you want to convert them is one click, you can convert that into a test case. Okay. And next, I'm just giving some demo here. Say, I'm using some kind of a provider pattern here so that I can run the same test case across multiple browsers. So actually NUnit is has more flexibility because I can customize the attributes, I can extend the attributes of my own. I can create the test cases dynamically. Maybe we can do it in MS test, but I'm more comfortable in the NUnit. So that's why I designed this using NUnit, but depends. So here what I'm doing here is just I'm decorating my test case as a test. That means it is a test as part of the test suite, just which is similar as MS Unit. In MS Unit you are going to say this as a test method. Here I'm going to say this as a test. And next my method, I'm going to pass my different providers to that. say if I'm passing a, what is this provider means? This is a kind of a browser provider. Say I'm passing IE, it is going to run by IE. I'm passing like a Firefox, it will run it on Firefox. If I'm going to pass it as like a Chrome, it runs on the Chrome. Okay. So for that, in NUnit, what I'm doing is, in NUnit is going to give us like a value attribute. So which is this. So actually, let me go through this code. So here, for now, I created like an enumerable list. So I'm passing this list each value to my method. So right now, yield means for each return, it is going to wait until that is going to perform, and it will come back the execution to the next point, and it will return that. So what I did is here, I created a local Firefox, local IE, and local Chrome. Those are nothing but classes. I created my own. If it is a Firefox, what I'm doing is, actually, I created a driver provider method, which is my abstract class, which is going to contain what is my driver name and how to create a WebDriver. It won't contain anything. So all my drivers are extending that, so that whenever whoever is going to call a create method on that my abstract class, for the corresponding provider is going to create a Firefox provider for me. So that Firefox provider, I can set up few things. Say sometimes what will happen like an automation, when you're opening a browser, it will be in a minimized place. Sometimes you are like looking for attributes, it won't recognize it because in a minimized place, your attribute places will be changed. So that always recommended to use some common pattern, make it as maximize and run your automation test cases. So here what I'm doing is, every browser has like a function called window.maximize. So once I call the window.maximize, my Firefox browser will maximize in a maximize window, then I can perform the rest of the actions. The local IE is also same thing, which is going to inherit from that. So which are already provided by the Selenium. I mean, these classes I got it, but in internet options, say you have some protecting mode settings in your IE, sometimes which will restrict you to perform actions. You can set up those as true or false. You can set up your own profiles if you are comfortable with browsers. Always we need to follow some standard pattern. So IE driver, I'm going to the same thing. Safari, same thing. Chrome, same thing. So all these are returning as an enumerable list to my test method. So when I'm running this test, say for example, that value source, if I'm making that as a configurable to run only on certain browsers, then automatically my test case will run only on those browsers. So I don't need to write a code specifically for IE, specifically for Chrome, specifically for Firefox. This is a single test case which is going to run on every browser. So here what I'm doing here is I'm first setting up the implicit weights that should be configurable. That means you are performing certain actions, how much time you need to wait until the next page is loaded or next control is loaded. So I'm giving 15 milliseconds. So we can make that as a configurable. Next, always I'm performing an automation test case. I need to make sure that all my cookies are deleted. So you can delete the cookies also using the Selenium. You can refresh the screen using refresh command. So there are many. So you can standardize those. You can perform the automation test case. So with the Selenium, the advantage is whereas in the coded UI, so they have each control has its own control type. In Selenium is not like that. Selenium is everything is implemented by interface driven, so that find by element is always iWeb element. A web browser is always going to be iWeb WebDriver. That's why you can inject like a dynamically whatever the browsers, whatever the controls dynamically onto that interfaces, so that rest of the code implementation will be the same. You don't need to worry about that.
How did you get this API? Did you have to import any?
Which API?
The driver.
This
driver
one?
managed.
This one? No, this I created a class.
The driver managed timeout.
Oh, this driver managed timeouts will give by the Selenium.
Yeah. How did you get it? Like, do you need to import certain?
No, Selenium, you need to install the Selenium WebDriver. Yeah. Once you get the web. For C Sharp.
Something like that would exist for Java.
The Selenium WebDriver is exist for Java, C Sharp,
for all those
Ruby.
Options we had.
Yes.
Each one of them have their own API.
Yep. So you can perform the actions here. And second thing, I already mentioned that I don't want to use like a thread.wait or thread.sleep. That means we should not take the control of the thread execution. It will create a synchronization issues. Sometimes your pages are quickly loaded, but you're still waiting for 5 minutes. It doesn't make any sense to wait for 5 minutes, even the page is loaded. Sometimes you're making that and it creates some other synchronization issues. Some other control is loading or some control is gone. So I don't want to use like a thread.sleep. So what here I'm doing is I'm using thread.sleep in a different way. I created a method, wait until true. So what I'm doing is I'm just passing a control which I'm looking for. So once I pass that as a function in a C Sharp, I don't know what it is in Java. This is completely C Sharp code. So this is the way you can pass as a function as a parameter to another method. So I'm passing my function as a parameter to this method. So here what I am doing is I'm invoking that method. So here what is that? My function here is element present. So this one is what it is going to do is it is going to find by element. If suppose element is identified, it returns true. If element is not identified, it returns false. Because in Selenium, if suppose element is not there, it will throw you an exception. That's why always we need to keep no such element exception there. I'm passing that function as a parameter to this method. I'm executing that method. If suppose it is success, continuous search is false. That means it will break and it will return as a success. If it is not break, then again it is going to recursively call the same function until the thing is identified or loaded up to that configurable value. Right now it is hard-coded. Elapsed time is hard-coded. So in seconds to timeout is 30 seconds. So that one you can make that as a configurable, so that if suppose you are exceeding that period of time, then still that is a issue.
Is that function that you're passing in take parameters? Where you set the parameter?
Here. Sorry. I'm calling this method by passing as another function to that parameter. Passing this is a function. I'm passing that function as a parameter. Yeah. I'm passing that function as a parameter to another method, a utility method, where it can execute that method and continuously waits until the element is present. That is C# way of doing it.
But how long overall? At some point it can fail, right?
That's why I gave the seconds to timeout, right? 30 seconds.
Within that it doesn't find, it will still.
If it doesn't find, if do not find, it will keep running this command. See, while I put while, right? While continuous search. If continuous search is false, then it will break down and returns true. If continuous search is not false, and again it will come here. Here I'm executing the method. Again I'm checking it, whether it is successful or not, and it again I'm moving to the next step until this period. Once I exceed my elapsed time, then I'm quitting from that function. This is the previous slide I showed, like a should not write like a explicit thread.sleep and thread.wait. That is the intention. And always your test method needs to be have a tear down method. In tear down method, always you need to check for driver is null. That means your driver is, once you're running a automation test case, it is going to open some command tool. So that will use as a driver. So if that is not open or it is open, then come here and close it. If suppose something happened on a memory and it automatically closes, then it won't go into the if condition, it will quit from that condition. So we need to always make sure that if something is open, close it. If nothing is open, don't do anything. Okay. Next, let me run this. So actually my Visual Studio will recognize the new test cases too. This is Chrome. Very successful. This is IE. Something happened there. Now Chrome is running. If you see myself using a data driven, so here the data is nothing but a browser. So I'm passing the different browsers to the same test case, and my test case is running on different browsers. So if anything, some exception happens, it is going to log that exception. So it is still performing action. Something is happen like this. So say for example, if something is happen like that, so sometimes we need to report a error message, and sometimes it is always better to report a screenshot. Selenium it is providing us to take as a screenshot in case of any exception happens. Say for example, there is Selenium we have like a iTech screenshot, so which is the interface screenshot. So what I'm doing is everything is driver as screenshot. So get screenshot, so it will get the screenshot. You can save as a file. You can give some name, say error message, or you can or screenshot .png image format .png. So actually you can put like this kind of checkings, and you can take the screenshot, so that when you are reporting as an issue, it should be, everything should be automated. So if you're again sitting there and doing manually, means not right.
Here you have given it after the first page, right? After you click submit on the first page. The screenshot.
Yeah, wherever you can take it.
So it will take for all.
No. Wherever the page where you are there. So if suppose you want to take first page, and normally we'll take the screenshot, some exception happens, put a try catch block, some exception happens, take the screenshot and save it. And so let me run it.
Is that also Selenium provided?
That is also something happened. Is executed. So what is my screenshot name? Screenshot.png. Summer outreach. No. No, wherever the application is running, it will create there. One contains folder, bin, debug, screenshot. So it takes the screenshot.
Can we do this with ID also?
ID, maybe we can do it. I don't know. We can do it. So we can take the screenshot. We can use the Selenium as like a JavaScript executor, so that I can place a configurable JavaScript, so that it can use bunch of JavaScripts. You can run the JavaScripts. You can get the output from the JavaScripts to the Selenium. You can verify it. Say for example, let me add that test case here. Verify other option. I'm exporting this. So, yep. So here I want to execute a JavaScript. Same thing, JavaScript executor. This is more customizable than code review. Driver. As JavaScript executor. Dot. Here, if you see this, you can execute asynchronous JavaScript. That means Ajax things you can perform. You can perform regular JavaScript too. So let me take this piece. So what is happening here is single braces replace. If you see this here, I'm executing jQuery because my application is already has references to jQuery, so it automatically knows like whatever the JavaScript files you already referenced in that web application. So let me run it. Right now it is going to run only for Firefox. Some connection issues here. And let me move it. Yeah. So JavaScript is executed and perform the action. So we can build some kind of interface using these standard techniques and methods. That's it. So if you have any questions, let me know.
You can insert data into the database also, right?
Why you need to insert a data?
When we are logging in, when we logged in, if you wanted to go further, there is a form there, right?
You can.
You have to type in something and submit.
Actually, so up to the submit, you are just replacing the human action with the automation testing.
Right.
Rest of the piece of the code is going to work, happens in the same way.
Right?
Because it is a functional testing.
Those kind of automation will work very well for us because we, whenever we do database refreshes or something, we lose a lot of data which we manually go and recreate. Probably we could automate those and get the data set up.
Actually, for that there are certain tools are there. You can dump the data. It generates the data for you. Yeah.
When it serves two purposes, I was saying get the data set up.
That's it. So any questions, and let me know then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions?